Hello guys, it's me Jamie. Welcome back to another video. Today I'm just going to be sharing with you my favorite books that I read in 2022. Basically, I have not allowed myself to talk about rereads, and I have made sure that every book is by a separate author, or if it's like a series, it's only like one book in that series, so you at least get like a wide range of recommendations. I haven't put them in any particular order. These are just my 10 favorites from 2022. I have already uploaded a video which is every single book that I read in 2022. I talked about 85 books and it was very brief, all of my like things that I had to say about the books, but if you do still want to see all the books that I read in 2022, I will link that video down below. I really recommend watching that first. But yeah, here are 10 books from that video that I'm going to talk about in more detail, and yeah, I hope you enjoy. Okay, the first book I want to share with you, like literally proceed with caution because this is one of the most like feral books I've ever read in my life, but it is Boy Parts by Eliza Clark. So I read this I think in like September or something. It made me feel a lot of things. Basically, we follow our unreliable main character. Her name is Irina, and she is like a very kind of up and coming hot new photographer on the scene, and she takes very provocative photos and art of kind of what she considers to be conventionally unattractive men or boys in very compromising positions. She finds this new subject who she's like obsessed with, and because she's a very beautiful woman, these guys will kind of like fall to do anything for her, but she puts herself in dangerous situations, but she doesn't really like give a fuck about her own life. Like, she doesn't value her own life, she doesn't value other people's lives. She is a complete narcissist. Basically, we just spend 297 pages living in her completely fucked up head, and I loved it and I hated it and I did not know what to think, but those sorts of books are the best books in my opinion. Like, it really made me think. It made me read reviews. I have seen reviews of people saying like, why would you ever read this? Yeah, I don't know, I feel like this book is, yeah, definitely not for the faint-hearted. Our character is really fucking awful and says some awful things and does some awful things, and a lot of like shitty things happen to her, but she is so detached from reality that it's a really strange reading experience. It's like she's not dealing with it emotionally, however she acts like she is really emotional about it to like manipulate people and get what she wants. But then it's interesting because if you read it from like a psychology perspective, it's like, wait, she does actually care, but then she's like covering things up. She's just like a very fascinating main character, and she's obviously like got some huge traumas in her past that she's trying to work through, but she's completely fucked. It was actually just quite a hilarious read, as well as being quite dark and quite uncomfortable. I think the references to pop culture in this novel are fantastic. For example, it references Timothée Chalamet and calls him a white bread absolute fucking baguette of a lad, which I think is like kind of true, but it's those sorts of like commentaries on pop culture which is hilarious. There's like this moment where our main character is singing to the song Greedy by Ariana Grande, but she changes the lyrics to greedy for love to greedy for something else, and it's absolutely a joke that I would like make with my friends. So it's just like hilarious moments of pop culture while also being like super twisted. I don't know, it was just like such a fucked up book, and I really loved it. I would say this is like the female non-gratuitous version of American Psycho. It was just fantastic, and I really recommend this if you're into like really weird kind of fucked up stuff. Like, not to be edgy, but if you're like into really weird fucked up stuff, go for it. So what was that? Why did I do that accent? I don't know. We're gonna move on to the next book. Down a much different avenue, we have Things We Never Got Over by Lucy Score. This is a 5 out of 5 star romance that I read this year. It's a long one, it's like over 500 pages. However, in my eyes, it's very worth it. I said this in my last video. I have seen the critiques that people have said about this book, and to an extent, I agree with them. Like, there are some really cringy lines in here. Like, this book is not a perfect book. However, I read it at the perfect time. Like, I read it when it was winter, it was super rainy outside, and this book is set in like a small town, and our main character like lives in a cabin in the woods, and she drinks all these fucking lattes, and like it just felt so cozy. And I think Lucy Score does a really good job at like transporting the reader into this like small town. I'm sorry, I haven't said what this is about. Basically, yeah, this is a small town enemies to lovers romance. We follow our main character Naomi, who is a runaway bride. She has run away from the altar because her twin sister, who is literally evil, sends her a text asking her like to meet her in this small town. When Naomi gets to the small town, her twin sister has done a runner on her and has left her with her 12-year-old niece, which Naomi did not know that she had. So Naomi is now like the caregiver of her niece, and on top of that she's getting a lot of grief from this like sexy barber, bar owner. Like he's a jack of many trades. She's getting a lot of attention from him, whether that be negative or positive. He's also super protective of her, so there's just this really intense like relationship that starts up between them. I definitely don't think that the characters are perfect, and a lot of this book can be quite ridiculous at times. However, like I said, the vibes were just absolutely there, and I loved our main character so much. I personally wouldn't put up with some of the things that Knox, our male love interest, did to her. However, she's a queen, I love her, and I really love the trope of like the super wise young child that kind of gives advice to the adults and just can come up with all these nuggets of wisdom. I kind of love that trope, even though I know it is ridiculous. I do just find it really sweet. So yeah, I did really like this, and yeah, just enemies to lovers goodness, to be honest. Definitely one of my favorite romances of the year. The next book you guys have heard me talk about so often, so I'll be quite brief with this one, but one of the other best books that I read in 2022 is Carrie Soto is Back by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I actually read this quite recently, like I think in October or November, and I absolutely loved it, and you guys know that it was a 5 out of 5 star read for me. I was definitely tossing up between putting this in my video or Malibu Rising, both books that I rated 5 stars this year, but I just wanted to have one by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and I just had to go with Carrie Soto. I think the character development in this novel is just fantastic. Basically, we follow our main character Carrie, who is a super famous tennis player who went into retirement. She also goes into retirement as a world record holder for a number of like slam matches won. However, her record is about to be broken by a new up-and-coming tennis player, so she decides to come out of retirement along with her dad, coaching her to enter in a few new tournaments and hopefully like steal her record and her title back from her. Such a beautiful story about a woman and her relationship with her single dad, her relationship with men in general, her relationship with herself, her relationship with her career, her relationship with success and failure. Like, I feel like Carrie learns so much about herself in this novel and grows so much as a human being. I have to respect it. I also see so much of myself in Carrie. Like, I'm just gonna be honest, Carrie Soto is absolutely a Capricorn rising, 100%. Maybe an Aries sun instead of a Leo sun like me, but I just feel like we have very similar charts. I need to get on the phone with Taylor and ask her. I just thought this was such a beautiful story. I did cry my eyes out at one stage, and I just feel like Taylor Jenkins Reid has such digestible, easy to read, easy to consume books while still having a lot of heart behind them and really strong characters and character development without just being too overcomplicated or overwritten. I just love this book, and definitely one of my big recommendations from 2022. Next we have Sweet Bitter by Stephanie Danler. I actually read this back in like January or February, and I ended up really loving this. This book is quite similar to Boy Parts in the sense that we follow this young female main character who kind of doesn't value her life, and she gets herself into these very tricky situations. But basically we follow our main character Tess, who is 22. She's just moved to New York and she gets this job at this big fancy restaurant. It's very much like a coming of age novel rather than something with a lot of plot. Tess kind of falls into the lifestyle of one of these people that work hospitality in this big New York City restaurant, and she kind of finds herself in some sort of love triangle at the same time. So it's definitely like a story about a girl's relationship with the city, a girl's relationship with like her work, and also just with the other people that she encounters. Even though the biggest love story in here is definitely the love triangle that our main character finds herself in, I actually felt the biggest love story for me was the fact that this was a love letter to the food industry, to the restaurant industry. As someone who worked hospitality for 4 years from the ages of like 19 or 20 to like 24, I could really see myself in this world 100%. And yeah, sure, I didn't work in a big restaurant in New York City, but I did work in one of like New Zealand's most popular restaurants that was very, very busy. So it was just really fun to kind of like be back in that sort of world. I don't know, the atmosphere was very, very strong in this one. I just really loved it. I loved the writing style, and yeah, I just read this at a really good time. I think I really, really resonated with it. Next, I read probably my favorite thriller of the year. I think I have like 3 thrillers in here, but this one is definitely my favorite of the year, and it is The Kind Worth Killing by Peter Swanson. This is the first Peter Swanson book that I've ever read after he has been recommended to me like quite a few times, and I just fell in love with this book. Basically, we follow our 2 main characters, Ted and Lily. They have this chance encounter at an airport, and they get talking about their relationships and their marriages and their like relationship problems. Ted's talking about the fact that he found his wife cheating on him. Together they kind of start joking, but eventually it becomes reality, like hatching a plan to murder her and how to get away with it. So it's this really super intense story, right? And it's told from 2 different perspectives, and we're like, oh my god, we're literally just gonna watch these 2 people like murder this person. However, from like Lily's perspective, it's definitely more of like the past, and Ted's perspective is more of the present. We're also hearing about this very damaged girl who thinks it's like okay to kill people, and how she grew up and how she became to be that person, and then yeah, present day where she's about to murder someone else, but with like this accomplice that she has. It is a very, very intense novel. It is completely full of twists and turns. Like there is a plot twist at every corner, I swear to god. But on top of that, the characters were just so fully developed and so well fleshed out. I do love a morally grey character and characters that you're like rooting for even though morally you know you're not supposed to, and this was full of that. I cannot wait to read more of Peter Swanson's books, more of his backlist. I was just on the edge of my seat the entire time reading, and I could not put it down. It was an absolute page turner, so I really recommend this book. I think it's so worth your time. Another one of my favorite books of 2022 was Twisted Games by Anna Huang. I actually did a full reading vlog on the Twisted series. That was quite recently as well. That was like in December or November. So I still have a full video on that, so you can go check it out if you want like full like at the time thoughts. But basically Twisted Games follows our 2 main characters, Bridget and Reese. Bridget is a princess and heir to the throne of this country called Eldora, and Reese is her new bodyguard. Bridget has no desire to become queen. She has no desire to sit on the throne, and so she's really happy that like she's actually like not the next in line. It's her older brother. But when her older brother, who has been training for the throne his entire life, abdicates because he's fallen in love with like a commoner, Bridget now all of a sudden is next in line to the throne and has to like is forced into this world essentially. While this is all happening, Reese, her bodyguard, who is also very like, he's like a war veteran, he's got this big dark past. They start getting closer, and Bridget is being like forced to potentially marry someone and date all of these suitors before she becomes queen, and Reese has to like watch her go on all these dates, and he's like super jealous, and they just form this very intense connection and bond, and I just loved it. It was such a beautiful romance. A lot of people call it enemies to lovers, but I don't think that's true. I think Reese and Bridget are definitely like prickly with each other at the beginning, however nowhere near close to enemies. They kind of get over that very fast, and they're always kind of attracted to each other. So it's definitely not like enemies to lovers. I would say it's definitely the largest trope is dealing with fame or like forbidden love. I just absolutely loved Reese and Bridget. They were such great characters, and I loved this whole story. I think it was a really like healthy romance. It was just beautiful. I really liked it, and it was such a good time, and yeah, that's all I have to say about it. Okay, this next book that I'm talking about, when I tell you I struggled because if you've been watching me this year, you'll know that I discovered a new favorite author, right? You'll know that like I found this new favorite author who I'm obsessed with, and I had 2 5-star reads from him this year, and I did not know which one to put in this video. However, I came to a decision, and I think you guys will probably know what it is. Before I reveal, please comment down below what book / author you think I'm talking about. And if you get it right, you're not allowed to edit it. I will see if you've edited the comment. If you get it right, I don't know, I'll just love you. There's no prizes, I'll just love you. Comment down below what you think it is. 3, 2, 1. Okay, if you guessed Beertown by Frederick Buckman, you are correct. So I was really struggling between this and Anxious People. However, I think Beertown had the biggest impact on me because it was the one that really was like, okay, fuck, I love this author, I'm obsessed with him, I'm gonna read his entire backlist. Like, this was the one that kind of brought me to Frederick Buckman and realized that I love him. Basically, I have explained this book so many times on my channel, but I will do it again. This is about a hockey town. It's in Sweden. It's very, very small, and there's this very big sense of hierarchy in the town where hockey is the most important thing. So all of the hockey players and the people involved in sport are like considered superior to everyone else in the town. So when a sexual assault happens in this town to a girl by one of the star hockey players, the town ends up being divided, and it's just such an intense story about like just really toxic masculinity and the fact that boys can get away with so much in the sports world. It's honestly disgusting, and I feel like this book touches on that so strongly. Frederick Buckman has such a way with words. His writing style is so beautiful and so picturesque and almost quite lyrical. Like, I feel like his writing is really lyrical while talking about really awful subjects. It's just so strong. I love Frederick Buckman so much. He creates such fully fleshed out characters and the most beautiful stories, and I cannot wait to read the finale of this trilogy and so much more of Frederick Buckman's backlist. So yeah, I definitely really recommend Beertown and the whole series. The next book I'm going to talk about is Blood Sugar by Sasha Rothschild. This is a book that I read quite recently as well, I think probably in October, and I just hear no one talking about it, but this book was so strong. Such a good thriller. Basically, we follow our main character Ruby. She has killed 3 people in her past, and she doesn't feel guilt about it at all. So we really learn about like Ruby's story and why she does the things that she does. But then one day her husband has this like awful accident and he passes away, and she's being investigated for it being murder, for it being foul play. And so all of a sudden all these things from her past are like coming up, but it's just interesting because this is the one like death that's happened in the vicinity of her life, in close quarters to her, that hasn't actually been by her hand. It was just such a fast like page turner. It was such an interesting read, and I think I was gripped from the beginning. Our main character Ruby, I felt so much sympathy for her, like, and it's again another one of those like super morally grey characters. However, you completely understand them and you really root for them. I was really rooting for Ruby. Oh, it was just such a good book. It was really good. And I think a big problem in the thriller genre is a thriller could be not that good, and then all of a sudden it has this really intense plot twist that no one was expecting, and so people are like, oh my god, 4 stars, it was great. This is a book that is just good from the beginning. Amazing characters, amazing plot, and it's not relying on a huge plot twist. It is what it is, and it is very thrilling. I really recommend this book. I want more people to pick it up because it is just so good, and yeah, this is definitely one of my top ones of 2022. The next book I'd like to talk about is one of my first books that I read in 2022. I honestly had a really good January, but it is Not That I'd Kiss a Girl by Lil O'Brien. This book was fucking fantastic. This is a memoir following our author Lil. She is a New Zealand girl. She grew up in a small town in New Zealand, and she always kind of knew that she was gay or that she liked girls. So we follow a lot of her kind of like coming to terms with that, being like, what am I? Like, I don't like boys, like, do I like girls? Blah, blah, blah. Like, kind of coming to terms with her sexuality, and then also dealing with really homophobic parents. It is such a vulnerable story. Like, it's super intense, and I cannot imagine the things that Lil went through. And so as a fellow Kiwi, but also queer person, I felt so connected to this novel. This sounds like such kind of like a backwards thing to say, but reading this, I was like, fucking hell, I am so grateful for the circumstances of my life and my family. It was just so heart-wrenching and such a good story, and I really commend Lil for the vulnerability that she shares in this novel. It's such a hard thing to share your traumas, and Lil really does a deep dive in here, and I feel like this would just be a really comforting novel for queer people all over the world, not just New Zealand. So I implore you, if you're into memoirs, please pick this one up. I found it to be so strong, and I just loved it so much. I think this is a really fantastic book. And then finally, the last book that I'm going to talk about is No Exit by Taylor Adams. I absolutely love this book. I read it in one sitting, and I wasn't even doing like a 24-hour readathon or anything like that. I just could not put it down. But basically, this is a thriller about a girl who's going home for Thanksgiving, and then she gets stuck in a snowstorm, so she stops at this rest stop, and there's a bunch of different characters at this rest stop, and while she's there, she goes out to take a phone call, and she sees that there is a little girl locked in the back of a van. So now she's like locked in this place in this snowstorm with like 4 or 5 people that she has no idea if she can trust or not. It was so chilling. I was on the edge of my seat at every page. So many different plot twists. It was just such a good thriller. I love books that are set in the span of 24 hours. So this was just fantastic, like so up my alley. And I thought our main character, Darby, was such a strong character. Like she was so fucking badass. So it was just so good to read. And I really recommend this, especially if you're not like into thrillers or you want to be, but you've never read one before. I feel like this is a really strong book to start with because it's just like quintessential like good thriller. But yeah, I absolutely love this, and I really want to read more of Taylor Adams. If there is anything out there, I want to read more of it. So those were all of my favorite books of 2022. I hope you enjoyed the video, and please let me know what your favorite books of 2022 were, because I really love getting those extra book recommendations. I do have my most disappointing books coming out very soon as well. Guys, again, thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed the video. A reminder that all of my socials are linked down below, as well as my Patreon, so if you do want extra content from me, that is linked down below as well. But yeah, again, thank you so much, and I will see you very soon in another video.